Okay, hello everyone. My name is Sue and today I will be presenting my research. So before we begin, I'm just going to mention, just like Audrey, that this is a preliminary study. So I don't have all of the data. My research is still ongoing, but I'm still going to be presenting what I have so far. So before we, let's begin. So I have a question for everybody. Do you think it's possible to learn a language without ever speaking to another living being, the language that you're trying to learn? Now, you may be thinking like, silly you, of course not. Like, who can learn a language without ever speaking that language with another person that is speaking that language? But then let me tell you a little anecdote of mine. So a few years ago, I went to Japan, and my friend is Japanese. She only speaks Japanese, but then she told me, oh, I want to learn French. And then I thought to myself, how are you going to learn French? Are you going to take some sort of courses? Or are you going to talk to people online to learn French? And then she told me no. So she told me that she wanted to use the software, which is called text-to-speech readers, but then of a very known app that is called Duolingo. So what she would tend to do is that she would just listen to an utterance in the app, just like this. So she would just play the sound button, and then she would just listen to the sound as like 50 times if she had to, until she would actually be able to hear the sound and be able to pronounce it. And then she would just repeat naturally after the recording until she thought her pronunciation was perfect. And then a few months later, she actually told me that she was coming to Montreal. And then she told me, oh, I'm going to go to Montreal just because I want to start now speaking with people. But then I thought to myself, oh, she's probably still a beginner. She just wants to immerse herself so that she can eventually be able to speak the language. But then actually when we went to a cafe, and then she started to speak in French. She ordered in French. And then I was so surprised because I was thinking to myself like, oh, how did she improve her pronunciation so much? So I asked her, oh, did you start speaking with other people or something? But then she told me no. The only thing that she used was this software. She would just listen to the recording and then repeat after it. And then with that, she was able to improve her pronunciation. So then that got me thinking, oh, why can't we implement this in classrooms nowadays? Because I don't know if you know this, but in classrooms, second language learning classrooms, they don't have a lot of time to teach you to speak the language. They usually focus on grammar or aspects like this of the language. So they don't necessarily provide input, relevant input or personalized input so that learners can improve their listening abilities and their speaking abilities. So then, thinking about this, I decided to look at the literature, and then according to Celsi and Murcia, when people are learning a second language, it goes through 3 stages. The first one being awareness, so being able to describe the different sounds, and then after that they have to be able to perceive the different sounds, and then after that they have to speak with other people, so they have to actually produce the different sounds. And then that means that perception precedes production, so you have to be able to listen to the words or listen to the sounds and then be able to distinguish the different sounds before even being able to speak the words. And then for this research, I decided to use a language that most of my participants would not be able to use, because I didn't want them to focus on the grammar and what they've learned in school and only focus on, oh, this means this, but then in that context, it means this. So I really wanted them to focus on sounds. So because of that, I've decided to pick Mandarin, which is a tonal language. And to make the experiment just a little bit simpler for the participants, I've selected 2 tones. The first tone being the high flat tone, and then the second tone being a descending tone. So I've selected those two tones specifically because according to the literature, these are the easiest tones that people pick up when they first learn Mandarin. And then what is important is that they are able to first perceive the sounds. So this is why I've decided to use a text-to-speech reader that would allow the participants to listen to the utterances as many times as they could. I've selected Nuance because it's the most accurate text-to-speech reader on the market. And then it's free, it's accessible, you can use it as many times as you want, and it's very simple to use it. So this is the first element that I've selected for my experiment. But then, just like Celsie's and Mercia's framework, we also have to be able to pronounce the words. So just like Swain's theory, it is very important to actually speak the words and not just listen to the words. So because of that, I've decided to use a technique that is called shadowing. Shadowing is basically just when you're repeated words as closely as possible, as accurately as possible, using the same inflections so that it sounds exactly what you're hearing. And then from there, I was able to recruit 11 participants. The reason why there are so few participants is because it's a preliminary study, so I don't have a lot of students, and because this has never been done as of yet, we don't have a lot of data. So first I wanted to know if it would work. My study is a 6-week long experiment in which there will be quantitative results and qualitative results. So I've used the pre-test and post-test to see if their listening skills would actually improve, and I've used weekly logs to see how they would perceive or what they thought about that technology that I've called text-to-speech based shadowing. And then from there, I've decided to target the 3 stages of Celsie's and Mercia's framework, which focuses on awareness, perception, and production. So I just wanted to know if, first of all, it was effective, so can people improve their awareness and perception of sounds with TTS and TTSS, and if it is something that they actually enjoyed using. So from there, for the first test, it was basically a test, it was a 2-part test. And I would just ask the participants to tell me, I would play 2 sounds, and then I would just ask them, are the 2 sounds the same or different? And then, because I wanted to know if they had some sort of metacognitive knowledge of the language, I just simply asked them, do you think, what is the difference? Can you explain it in words? To see if they would actually be able to perceive tones or something else, perhaps. And then there were 2 ABX tests. So the ABX test is basically when you're trying to, you just have to tell me if the 2 sounds are the same or different. So it was a little bit like the first test, but without the description of of whatever you were hearing in the recording. And then for the second test, what I asked them is that there were 3 sounds, and then they had to match the 3rd sound to either the first sound or the second sound. So, oops, sorry. And then from there, after that, because I also wanted to know whether they would improve their pronunciation, I also came up with a pronunciation test. So they had to repeat, it was a listen and repeat type of activity. And then there would be an audio recording from a native speaker of Mandarin, and then they would simply have to repeat after it. And then for the qualitative analysis, for the weekly logs, I would just ask them, is there anything that you liked about, or did you face any challenges, or is there anything that you would like to share about your overall experience using this tool? And then for the results, although it's still an ongoing research and I don't have all of the data, I will still today be presenting what I have so far. So from the first test, what we can see is that half of the participants actually had a perfect score from the pre-test. and then post-test was the same. And then the other two participants, they improved a little bit. And then for the second part of the experiment, none of the participants were actually able to tell what the difference is in a written format. But what they would tend to say is that the first sound that was played or the second sound was usually either longer or shorter. So instead of thinking about tones, they were actually thinking about the vowel length to differentiate the different sounds. And then for the first test, so the first perception test, so for the first ABX test, actually 3 participants had the same results, and then 1 participant improved a little bit. And then from the second perception test, everybody improved or stayed the same, so half and half. And then for the production test, this one is a little bit different because 2 of the participants so far have stayed the same, but then one of them, their perception of tones was actually better, but then for the other person, it decreased. So their score were a little bit lower. And then for the qualitative analysis, so the participants overall said that they really liked the software. They thought that it was something that was simple, that they liked the voice overall. It was very good for somebody because they could use this software anytime they want, anywhere they want, whenever they want, without the help of a third party. But then, again, like, that software was not perfect because for them, they thought that it was a little bit more difficult when it was longer sentences. So they thought that the speed of the voice was a little bit too fast. So they would have liked it if maybe there was a playback, there was a playback speed button so that they could change the speed of the voice so that they could slow it down and actually listen to each individual sounds without having to figure out when a word starts, when a word ends. And then now, what did I find with this? It seems like, yes, they did. Their awareness was improved, but again, they had their perception of sound was not necessarily right because they didn't think that it was necessarily a tone that was different. It was more likely the length of the vowel that was different. And then for the perception, yes, they improved overall, but then because of the scores were already high, or some of the participants already had 100%, maybe I thought maybe, oh, my test is maybe too simple, so it was not hard enough. Maybe I should have included more tones. And then in terms of production, some of them improved, some of them didn't improve. So maybe, like, I'm not sure of what it means, but again, this could be due to either maybe individual differences. Maybe people learn at different rates and they are not at the same stage, even though they spend more time on the exercise, on the listening exercises, or less time. And then again, because it's such a short study and there are not a lot of participants that I've evaluated so far, maybe that could be the reason why the results are a little bit different. And then overall, this proves that yes, because their perception did improve more than their production, maybe that shows that it follows Celsey's and Mercia's framework. And then again, all of the different results could be due to individual differences, and we have to be careful of the results when we interpret them because it was a short study and there was a very small sample. So overall, maybe in the future, what we could do to improve my experiment would be maybe to use ASR so that there's not a person that would be judging you, but rather a tool that could help people figure out whether their pronunciation is right. And maybe we could include it in with traditional teaching practices. And then that's all.